You may remember from a few years ago a British romantic comedy called Love Actually. It opened with the scene of a busy airport passenger area and a voiceover of one of the characters saying that whenever he gets gloomy about the state of the world, he thinks about the arrivals terminal at Heathrow Airport and the uncomplicated delight you see on the faces of friends and family as they find each other and reconnect. Then he goes on to say that all the known parting messages by people who died on 9/11 were messages of love, not hate. And at the end of the film, it closes again with a scene of people in the airport greeting each other and hugging each other. I would bet we've all glimpsed moments like these in airports, the teary hugs and farewells, the ecstatic greetings with flowers and balloons. There's something about parting, coming back together, that focuses us on what matters most. It's often a time when we say things we've left unsaid. And especially if we're saying goodbye, we often utter what's most on our mind and what we most want someone to take with them as we part. The last Sundays in Easter season are all about farewells. For 50 days after Easter, the risen Lord continued to appear and to be part of the life of his disciples. But all that came to an end in the event we call the Ascension. The lessons for these weeks focus on Jesus preparing his disciples, and that, of course, means you and me, to carry on when their Lord is no longer tangibly with them. Today we're given maybe the most deeply loved image of Jesus of them all, and probably the one many of us remember from our youth, Jesus, the Good Shepherd, the Lord who loves and gives his life for his flock and who promises always to be there to guide and care for us. It's an image of Christ that lifts the spirit. A good many of us, I suppose, probably memorized the 23rd Psalm back in their Sunday school days with a beautiful Caucasian Jesus sitting up there with a beautiful lamb on his shoulders. And if you haven't already memorized it, you should go on and do it now. It's a key tool to carry through your life, to have it there when the moments come, as they will come, when you need to know that the Good Shepherd is with you. We will begin next week hearing Jesus' farewell teachings to his disciples just before he went to the cross. And today we begin listening to the first letter of John, which some scholars believe was written by the last of Jesus' circle of disciples still living, and maybe, just maybe, the one he was closest to. These readings are filled with urgent advice and can sound like the words of a professor giving his last lecture, summing up everything he's wanted to say over a lifetime, or like a worried mother at the airport pouring out her last urgent words of advice before Junior steps on a plane for 2 months away. Little children, let us love not in word or speech, but in truth and action, John says. Love one another as I have loved you, Jesus says. You did not choose me, but I chose you, he says. And using a word that comes up again and again, Jesus says, abide in my love. Abide in my love. But beneath all the words pouring from Jesus' heart and from the pen of John the disciple, there's really just one word that expressed the reason for Jesus' whole life. It's love, actually. For Jesus, love is the reason God made the world. Love is the way we are made to live. Love is what worship and religious life are made to show us. Love is why Jesus came to us. Love is what God will never stop trying to show us. Love is what we are meant to abide in all the days of our life. It's easy to forget how radical this notion was that God is love. Most of the religions up until then spoke of a God as a power, God as righteousness, God as creator, God as judge, God as king, God as ruler. All of them in attempts in metaphor to capture the whole richness and fullness of ultimate reality. But here was an utterly simple understanding of the essence of God. God is love. God is love, Jesus says, and those who abide in love abide in God, and God abides in them. That's the sentence that finally opened the door of faith for me after years of questioning. As part of my searching, I had been slowly reading the New Testament straight through, night after night. And one night, after many nights, this is at the back of the New Testament, I landed on this passage. And all of a sudden, talk about God that for so long had seemed remote and abstract became concrete and real to me. To love, I saw, is literally to experience God. God is the energy of existence, the energy of communion, the secret unity that holds everything in one, and that it moves through the atoms and molecules and rivers and mountains and people and the forces of history. So when I love, when I move out of myself to care for another, I'm stepping into the flow of God's love that goes on and on. And I become united with the power of life moving through the universe. And when I don't love, I cut myself off from God and from those around me. For the Russian novelist Fyodor Dostoevsky, it is this loving that actually leads us to God. The wise old monk in the Brothers Karamazov was giving his own farewell teaching to his followers as he was lying on his deathbed when he said, "Love all of God's creation, both the whole of it and every grain of sand. Love every leaf, every ray of God's life. Love animals, love plants, love each thing. If you love each thing, you will perceive in the mystery of things the real God." This kind of love is anything but sentimental. Love in action is a harsh and dreadful thing compared with love in dreams, Dostoevsky's old monk would say. In fact, one of the most important books I read in my searching years was a little book called The Art of Loving, written by the secular Jewish psychiatrist Erich Fromm. He too said that the whole point of existence is loving, but that there's nothing more demanding that we will ever take on. Loving is an art, he said, and it takes the kind of practice and discipline required to be an accomplished pianist or dancer or scientist. If we want to become full human beings, he said, we must slowly and carefully learn the art of loving. I sometimes wonder if the word love is even recoverable. It's used for so many different things. I love chocolate ice cream. I love that new car. I love the Red Sox. Any priest will tell you that much of what couples often bring to the altar at a wedding is a strong sense of feeling in love. That's the natural place for marriage to begin, of course. But unless their love grows deeper, the marriage will head for trouble. The love we speak of in marriage isn't about feelings. It's an act of will, the commitment to care for the other, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, for a lifetime. And it's that promise, that commitment, that will provide the strong, safe harbor as feelings come and go. I have to say that for all the charm of the movie Love Actually, I don't remember seeing much love in it. It seemed more about physical attraction and the complex ways people keep falling in love with each other. You see, love is changing diapers and doing the dishes. It's living with the ups and downs of life with teenagers and the ups and downs of parents too. Frederick Buechner somewhere says that real love comes into play in the marriage service itself, but it becomes the real thing when the sink is full of dirty dishes and the bills haven't been paid and it's 2 a.m. and the baby starts crying and your spouse has a head cold and you do not want to get out of bed. That's when it's time for love. Love is speaking honestly to someone who has hurt us. It's telling a friend she's drinking too much. It's putting a career on hold because your family needs you. Love is making sure that values deeper than just the bottom line drive our business decisions. Love is a mother and father I saw in Copley Square last summer showing Boston to their Down syndrome son, probably in his 20s or 30s, and lovingly, patiently pointing out and explaining everything around him. Love is tutoring a child and visiting an inmate and writing a check and befriending someone we know is on their own. Love is joining in this afternoon's time of discernment of where God is calling this Christian community to move in the years ahead. And of course, real love, when it is lived out in the public arena, is called justice. And that calls us all to work for better schools, for prison reform, for humane immigration policies. Little children, let us love not in word or speech, but in truth and action, John says. Preacher Tom Long, in a book called Testimony, described the experience of a woman named Mary Ann Bird, who had written a memoir called The Whisper Test. Mary Ann Bird was born with multiple defects, including a cleft palate, a disfigured face or crooked nose, deafness in one ear, and a twisted leg. And of course, along with all that came considerable emotional damage from other children asking questions like, "Oh, Mary Ann, what's wrong with your lip?" The worst part for her of the whole experience, she wrote, was the annual hearing test in school, when each child had to come forward and cover one ear and then another while the teacher whispered a simple phrase like, "The sky is blue," or "You have new shoes." Mary Ann could hear in one ear and did everything she could, including cheating, to minimize attention on her. She hated the whisper test. One year, her teacher was Miss Leonard, who was everyone's favorite. The day came for the terrible test. Mary Ann cupped her ear, and Miss Leonard leaned forward, and Mary Ann describes what happened this way. "I waited for those words which God must have put in her mouth, those words that changed my life. Miss Leonard did not say, 'The sky is blue,' or 'You have new shoes.' What she whispered was, 'I wish you were my little girl. I wish you were my little girl.'" Little children, let us love not in word or speech, but in truth and action. God is love, and those who abide in love abide in God, and God abides in them. That's the heart of Christianity. It's the point of it all. It's love, actually.